Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Fronteras A Changing America. I'm Anthony Moreno. On the program today, we learn more about a new tutoring program at a local elementary school in Las Cruces that officials say is showing promise. Also, we'll bring you an empowering story of an El Paso organization working to offer professional mentoring services for women in the borderland. But first, we start the program with a conversation about transparency and accountability in New Mexico. Joining us is State Auditor Joseph Maestas, who shares more about his first year in office and issues his office is taking on. Auditor Maestas, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Anthony. It's great to be with you again. And I want to congratulate you on the 50-year anniversary of KRWG.
We appreciate that. Thank you very much. Last time you visited us, some of the issues that you brought up with your office was resources and staffing. I'd like to follow up with you on that.
Sure.
How has that been going?
Well, if you look at my office, it's responsible for annually auditing well over 1,200 public entities, but yet our budget is about 4.2 million. Fully staffed, we're at 41 full-time positions. And so it's a kind of it's a small office, and I feel that we need additional resources because we don't do all the audits. As we discussed the last time, we vet these independent public accountants, and we have about 52 that have to be pre-approved before they can go out and contract with public entities to perform the annual financial compliance audits for those entities. And the entities themselves pay for the audit, not my office. So I think that's one of the primary functions of our office. And I feel, and I think many even in the industry feel, that these regulatory offices like mine, and the only thing we do regulate are the independent public accountants, but we do have a significant constitutional duty to ensure that public entities are accountable and transparent for the way they manage public resources. And so it's a very significant mission. And what I'm trying to do as state auditor is convince the appropriators, the legislators in the State House, how important this position is and how things are changing in terms of some of the issues at play, the incidents of fraud, waste, and abuse across the state, at all categories, from higher ed down to the smallest entities. And so it's really important that my office stay abreast of the latest in fraud detection and mitigation. And so I'm on a crusade to really convince them of the importance of the function of my office. And then as a side note, the public accounting industry is contracting. We have fewer and fewer CPAs. We have fewer and fewer independent public accounting firms that we pre-approve every year. And so this is alarming in that the workload is the same and getting more complex with the proliferation of all these accounting standards. I'm concerned, and I'm taking it upon myself to see what I can do to start restoring the industry and bring it to a position of growth. But we've been experiencing about a 10-year trend of contraction, and that should be concerning not just to me and you, but everyone out there in terms of how well are agencies like mine safeguarding public resources.
Just how big is the competition? You're competing against some corporations as well who may hire accountants in the private industry who are going to be making a pretty good amount of money starting off. So how do you have those conversations with lawmakers to let them know what you're competing against?
Well, as an engineer, I believe in data-based, solutions and policy recommendations. And so I'm not just going to say that my staff is underpaid relative to the private sector and especially the public sector, private sector, but I'm actually doing the work. We just did a study, and this is just public to public. I benchmarked my office's wages against other state auditor offices nationally and in the region, and we're lagging way behind. This is simply public to public, and my next step is to study the wage gap between the public and the private sector in public accounting, specifically my office's wages with what's being paid in the private sector. And are we competing? The answer is no.
I see. So how big is the difference compared to other public entities?
Again, we haven't
state?
substantiated the difference between the public and private sector, but just public to public, my office relative to other state auditors' offices, it's about 30%. It's about a 30% gap.
I see.
Yeah.
When you're having those conversations with lawmakers, I mean, what are some of the things you're bringing up with them besides the competition that other public entities in our neighboring states may be offering? Just talking about transparency and accountability in the state.
Sure.
Why should people care?
Well, they should care because the budget that public entities can provide for their public audits is basically controlled by the Department of Finance and Administration, DFA. And so this is a problem in that some of the accounting firms feel that the profit margin is diminishing with the proliferation of standards, and to compound that is you have these constraints on the budgets that all these public entities can allow for their public audit. And so that's a huge issue, and it's just simply compounding the issue, and it's just discouraging more and more public accounting firms from continuing. And I think we're at a critical stage right now myself. And so I've been working with higher education, New Mexico State included. I think I just, when we last sat down, I met with the accounting department, and we have since then created a more robust intern program so I can do my part in feeding that pipeline of aspiring certified public accountants.
How essential is that right now? Obviously, you mentioned resources being a challenge in your office right now, but that next generation coming up, how many people are actually interested in going into public accounting?
Oh, you know what? There's just a lack of interest. I just saw a presentation about some of the national trends, and apparently the decision to back out of accounting happens in college, and so, which surprised me. And I think it's ever more needed of higher ed to maintain that interest and stimulate more interest on the part of accounting majors to stay in accounting and then eventually pursue a career in accounting. I'm bound and determined to make spreadsheets sexy, but I need higher education. I need the legislature to really help and reform wages. Every single agency is going to go before appropriators and say, we're unique and special, but you know what? We're unique and we're special. And so I'm trying to impart that, but I'm using hard data when I have conversations with legislators. In fact, I'm going to be meeting with Senator Joseph Cervantes after we're done here to talk about that.
Okay, we'll be interested to learn more about that. I want to look back a little bit on your year. Has that been the most frustrating thing in your first year of service, is just the resources and staffing?
It is. It's, there's a high turnover rate. I inherited an agency that had almost a 40% vacancy rate. We have managed to bring that down under 20%, but there's still a significant wage gap. And let's face it, my office is based in Santa Fe. The cost of living is extremely high, and so no one really can afford to live in Santa Fe on the wages that we offer. And so right now, the state legislature has commissioned, it's a pay and compensation study, but they're first looking at hiring processes. And I broached the subject of perhaps considering locality pay. In other words, providing a higher wage rate within the city of Santa Fe because of the cost of living. A lot of the major cities have had that for many, many years. The federal government has locality pay, and it's based on the cost of living in those appropriate locales. And so we need there's a lot of work that needs to be done, a lot of reform. if we're really going to attract and retain the best and the brightest. But right now, we're losing them to Dallas, Denver, Phoenix, Austin, to big private accounting firms. And the brain drain continues, Anthony.
Now, looking back on this past year, what do you think was your biggest accomplishment as an office?
I think my biggest accomplishment initially was really proactively going after and hiring the best and brightest on my executive team. Maybe when we have time, I can talk about them individually, but they're really gifted and talented, and I've never been so involved in recruiting appointed officials. Having been a mayor before, I've done that, and I know how important it is to have a very professional and competent executive team, but I've also been personally involved in hiring division directors. So I think staffing up the office with high caliber professionals that are competent, I think has been my number one accomplishment. But I think my next one is developing my own budget. This is the first time that I've submitted a budget on my own watch, and it'll be considered in the upcoming budget session in January of 2024. I've come forward with a new vision and new priorities, and so that's been very, very exciting. Some of the things that we also accomplished is the opioid settlement funds. I think you've heard all about that.
Yeah.
My Chief General Counsel's office researched the settlement, and apparently my office has a lot of authority in terms of enforcing the management of those funds. Basically, Anthony, if you're a city and you get opioid funds, if you misappropriate them, my office steps in and says you can't receive them until you return the misappropriated funds. And so this is a big deal. It's a little clunky in that the only time I can take action is after an annual financial compliance audit. We've already had one particular local government that misappropriated funds. We sent out an advisory to all the public accounting firms, asking them to look at that to ensure that they have a separate fund, that they don't commingle opioid settlement funds with other funds, and that those communities, that they spend them in accordance with the settlement.
Yeah, we're looking at around over $1 billion in funds coming to the state of New Mexico, state government and local governments. You wrote an op-ed about this, calling on lawmakers at all levels to pay attention to this and make sure they're doing their due diligence with this. What are your biggest concerns with this? And as lawmakers start to meet and develop their plans for this, you're calling on them to develop a plan and put it into place. I mean, what do you think is going to work where we have the best chance of not having any discrepancies?
Well, this is a long-term payout, and that's why I felt that I should put all these, especially the local governments, I'm talking cities and counties across the state, they've already received their initial allocation. And what I am telling them is that, look, you have a whole menu of options on how you can spend these opioid funds consistent with the settlement, but one size doesn't fit all. So I recommend every single community out there to have the necessary conversations with appropriate stakeholders and decide, okay, this would be good, this would be good, this would be good. This is our plan, our customized plan to meet the needs in our community, and then implement it. But implementation needs to take place in the form of appropriate policies and procedures of how they're going to manage and spend the money.
With this issue, you are from an area that's been impacted dramatically by opioids. Can you share with us just maybe how personal this issue might be to you?
Oh, it is. I mean, I had family members that were addicted to opioids. I had friends that died of overdoses. I come from the community of Espanola. As a freshman counselor, the police department was the first police department in the country to administer Narcan intravenously. That was the only method of availability of Narcan at that time, was intravenously. And so that just gives you an idea of, how long at least my community had been dealing with it and how it's persisted. But now you're dealing with much more powerful synthetic opioids and not to mention fentanyl. And so we need to stay ahead of this as a state, and every single community needs to not just have the initial conversation about what may be an appropriate plan to mitigate the impacts of opioid addiction, but to sustain that and keep having those conversations. And if something doesn't work, then change it, amend it, replace it. Keep having that conversation, because again, this is a long-term payout of these settlement funds, and the impacts, the mitigation of these impacts, it's not going to happen in a year or two. It's going to take a while.
You've mentioned resources and staffing being an issue. You're going to be talking with lawmakers about what other issues are your top priorities for 2024?
Well, my top priorities are my financial audit division. It's the biggest division. This division right now is at the peak workload. We're in the middle of receiving all the audit reports from the 12 or 1,300 public entities, and they're staggered throughout the fall. And it's virtually impossible, given the current FTEs, the positions that we have, to meet this peak workload. And so I've requested in my budget some money to set aside to hire contract auditors to assist us during this peak workload. But I am laying the groundwork for a subsequent budget request to expand my financial audit division. That division is the workhorse of my office, and their needs are great. Plus, we're expected by the legislature to bring in revenues when we do audits in-house. As an example, we're auditing the Albuquerque housing. We charge fees. Our fees are capped by the state government, which really kind of limits us in terms of how much fee revenues we can bring in, but we're expected to generate fees. And so we'll perform if we have the resources to do that. And we plan to do more and more audits in-house because, as I mentioned, the industry's contracting. We have fewer and fewer accounting firms. And if there's a public entity out there that can't find an accountant, then by law, my office has to perform the audit. And so we need to be ready with those resources to respond. I'm not going to say on a moment's notice, but there are going to be unanticipated needs that'll come up that my office needs to respond to.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time. State Auditor Joseph Maestas of New Mexico, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Moving on now to education news. So according to officials, a tutoring program at a local elementary school in Las Cruces is showing promise. KRWG Public Media scholar Noah Race reports the school and program recently captured the attention of New Mexico's public education secretary.
New Mexico State Secretary of Education Dr. Arsenio Romero visited Doña Ana Elementary School to view new programs for students designed to improve their education. This is not his first time stepping onto the campus, as he used to work at the school earlier in his career.
It's just wonderful to come back and see some amazing, innovative practices happening.
One program that was heavily emphasized during the tour was called Tutoring by Teachers, or TBT. This program allows students to get virtual and more personalized teaching for 30 minutes 5 times a week. Doña Ana Elementary School Principal Sherry Love says that she has seen all students benefit.
We saw our students at 5–10% proficient, especially last year coming in. At the end of the year, we ended at 41% proficient. It's still not where we want to be, but that's significant growth in a short period of time.
Now you gotta find a Barbie.
Principal Love says that TBT does not just cover math. The program can cover a wide range of subjects, and the school will be adding English tutoring next year. This has helped many students progress faster in their education, as the teaching groups only have a maximum of 3 students at a time.
This is one program, but it still takes the teachers teaching, core content, our math program, as well as this, differentiating throughout the day so that all students benefit. And so the reason why we continued is we saw the difference it made, and the students are engaging those tutors.
New Mexico has historically ranked very low in comparison to other states in terms of education. Dr. Romero is confident that programs like these are key to turning that around.
We all know what happens if you Google New Mexico. You've heard of other states that have been able to make some dramatic jumps in outcomes for students, Mississippi being one of them. Mississippi, they call it the Mississippi Miracle. It wasn't a miracle. They were very strategic in what they did. What we're doing here in New Mexico are much of the same initiatives, but we're doing them faster.
I was asking, do we have to do this in order?
The Tutoring by Teachers program has shown some early signs of success at Doña Ana Elementary School. With the program being optional for schools in Las Cruces Public Schools District, more schools from kindergarten to 12th grade may opt in the future. For KRWG Public Media, I'm Noah Race.
In El Paso, workshops held by Crowning Point aim to help empower women by offering business networking and mentoring opportunities. We learn more about how the organization is making an impact in our region in this segment, Stories of Resilience.
Welcome everybody. We're excited to have you all here today. This foundation has impacted women at a local level in ways that I had never would have even imagined. As women, we face a lot of challenges, but when you add to the fact that we're minorities, there's more challenges. There's even deeper challenges, right? Women of color are treated like secondary. It may be, if we're Hispanics, because of our accent, right? We're maybe looked upon as maybe not being as intelligent because we have an accent. You're trying to speak in two languages, and so it doesn't come out the way you want to share it. As Hispanics, the way we were raised in our culture, I felt that it was important to reach out to women here in the El Paso community. I actually started to see how COVID was impacting women. Because we were the caretakers, right? We were at home, we were taking care of the kids, we were working, everything was falling on our lap, and I saw it happening. And so I thought, no, this is the perfect time to get started. So I actually started both companies during COVID. During that time, I took a step back. I was thinking, this isn't the right time to start a business. Businesses were closing, small businesses were drastically being impacted, and I felt this was not the right time to start the company. And so, going online through that, I was able to make connections with other women.
The El Paso Chamber is very focused on helping businesses, and one of the programs that I wanted to bring in place when I took over this as a director of programs was to partner with different organizations that are helping the business community. And Cynthia and I go back many years, and we've been friends ever since. So one of the things that we wanted to do is bring a program together that we could offer to our members as well as the business community focused on women.
And so the training that we provide is to help an individual with the skills needed to overcome the challenges. And so through the foundation, what we do is we're able to offer mentoring services. There's no cost, there's no fee for the individuals to receive the mentoring services, to receive, the workshops, the training. There's no fee behind that, because I wanted to make sure that anyone had access to this knowledge, to this opportunity, to the experience of what Crowning Point is about. And so that's how these two companies work together.
In 2020, when everything with COVID did happen, during that time, my husband passed away and left me and my 3 boys. I've been able to find that mentorship, so we are able to teach each other while we're learning. We're learning leadership skills. We're learning how to be self-aware of ourselves, how to communicate, how to grow in our businesses, how to become leaders, and not just a business itself, but as an entrepreneur.
You may cut me with your words, you may shoot me with your lies. I do believe that we need more women leaders in the world right now. With everything that's going on, we need strong, empathetic, thoughtful, trustworthy, loving, inspiring leaders. We rise together. We rise together. or the opportunity that we have right now is to empower one another and to work together to put our strengths together with other people's strengths so we can balance out each other's weaknesses and to really step into our power and lead. And that is going to require women working together.
You know, my mom actually wanted to, when she was raising me, she wanted to show me how to be a good wife. She was teaching me ways in being a good wife and making sure that I knew how to cook and all those other wonderful things that make a good wife. But I wanted to be more than just a wife. I had ambitions, and it was difficult. My mom didn't know how to handle that. She didn't know how to handle the fact that I wanted more in life. You know, in the Hispanic culture, we have curfews and things like that. And even as a divorcee with a child, I still had to ask for permission to go out. There was things that I wanted to do in life that were discouraged because I was a female. And my thought was, you know, I have the potential. I don't think they understand that I have the potential to do this. I have the ability. And it was a constant fight. I was not normal growing up. So that's why today I am who I am. You know, my parents, both of them, didn't graduate from high school. And so it wasn't because they lacked intellect, it's they lacked resources. And I think that's where my desire to help others comes from. And so the foundation is set up to, you know, both of these businesses are focused on women, but with the foundation, it's focused on Latinas and women of color, high school seniors and women. It's important that women talk to other women, that we're open with each other and talk about those challenges. And so how can we help them overcome those challenges?
That's it for our program. Remember, you can always stay updated with news anytime at krwg.org. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.